everybody, Jason, I'm New Age Revolution Cave. It is Tuesday here on the big show. That's right. Happy Tuesday to all. To any and all. I don't know. It's a return of Hey, Do You Remember? That's right, where we talk about all of those glorious memories of our past, the things that were exclusive only to us, only to 80s kids, that no other kid from any other decade could ever relate to except us. Hey, do you remember? And tonight, as we kick off October, and Kenny Omega, $10. Anybody wants them? Kenny Omega. A pile of AEW figures here that I spent hundreds and hundreds and maybe even over $1,000 on for these children for Christmas. They don't want them. Keith Lee? No, this isn't Keith Lee. What's his name? Powerhouse Hobbs. Anybody want Powerhouse Hobbs? I don't know. Anyway, it's October. It's October, and I'm going to do the very best that I can to watch as many horror movies as I can this month. I was planning on watching Aliens tonight, which is the proper name for Aliens Part 2. It is officially Aliens. I will try to watch that tonight. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But some of you have given me horror movie suggestions. Anyway, it's October, and we're talking about horror movies. So, hey, do you remember? Hey, do you remember some of the first horror movies you ever saw? That's right. When were your little virgin eyes exposed to the gruesome, bloody, gory, terrifying images that were broadcast on your little 13-inch television? When were you exposed to horror? How were you exposed to horror? And are you doing okay today with it? Are you doing okay? I will not tell the story again. I have told it so many times. It's one of my favorite childhood stories. And that is my exposure to cable television at an extremely early age without any parental guidance whatsoever. Parental guidance suggested? Nah, not where I come from. Not from the streets where I'm from. No parental guidance when it came to television. I had cable in my room at a very young age, and I dove right in. And I don't remember ever seeing this movie until recently, but I remember ads for The Howling all over HBO all the time. The Howling and Return of the Living Dead, not Night of the Living Dead, but Return of the Living Dead, the good one, the funny one, was always being teased on HBO. And so I remember seeing ads for those movies all the time. I have always told myself that I watched Friday the 13th at 8 years old. Not the original, but whichever one was out in 1984. I don't know what part 2 or part 3. My memories tell me that I saw that. I do know for sure that I would watch Friday the 13th with my grandparents at a young age on USA. USA cable network would play scary movies pretty much all year, but during October they would play them on Sunday afternoons on USA. I'll never remember his name. Commander USA. Commander USA would do horror movies, and then during the day, so Sunday afternoons, I don't know. My grandparents, I wasn't even living with them at the time, so I was probably 10, and I would just sit in their family room with them, and we'd watch Friday the 13th or The Blob or Cujo or whatever was on USA at 2:00 in the afternoon on a Sunday. Tales from the Dark Side was an extremely early memory as far as horror. I can guarantee you I saw Tales from the Dark Side at about 9 years old because it was, and any TV guide. See, I love how the brain just, what is it, the Mandela effect, where the brain just kind of tells you something and you don't really know if it's true or not. I have a ton of TV guides right over my shoulder here and a ton more in other parts of the room. I have looked in my TV guides Saturday nights, 11 p.m., Saturday nights midnight, Saturday nights 1 a.m., because in my mind, I would watch wrestling at midnight and then Tales from the Dark Side would come on WOR, Channel 9. No TV guide confirms that. So maybe my brain is just making it up. But I saw Tales from the Dark Side early on, but had no memory of the episodes. I only had memory of the theme song because the theme song was terrifying. For whatever reason, the music, the darkness, the dark to light thing, the voiceover, just great. Great stuff. So Tales from the Dark Side was a pretty early horror exposure for me. Cujo, definitely saw Cujo a lot as a kid. A little later was Pet Sematary. I saw Pet Sematary a lot. I saw Nightmare on Elm Street pretty early in life, probably around 10 years old or so. Nightmare on Elm Street. I would watch The Thing a lot. That's not true. Not The Thing. The Swamp Thing. I would watch Swamp Thing a lot, and I would watch Creep Show a lot. Creep Show was a very early horror movie, and that memory just got triggered because I mentioned Swamp Thing, Adrienne Barbeau, and she's in Creep Show as well. I loved Creep Show. I still love Creep Show. But I saw that a lot. And that was at a time when, look, what 10-year-old is sitting down and watching an hour and a half movie straight? You don't. So I would see Creep Show in all the segments. I would always catch different segments of Creep Show. But definitely saw that one a ton of times as a kid. What else? What else did I see? Yeah, I never thought Swamp Thing was always just on. Remember, Swamp Thing was just always on TBS. Swamp Thing, always there. Always there. My mom actually took me to see Friday the 13th Part 5 in the movie theater with my two sisters. Now, Friday the 13th Part 5 is what? 80, 85, 86? I don't know. So let's just say I'm 11. Let's say I'm 11. My sister, number 1, is 9. My sister, number 2, is 7. And my mom is loading us into the car and taking us to the local, Cineplex. And we're all snuggling in for Friday the 13th, Part 5. 11, 9, and 7. That's great. I think that's great. I do. I think it's great. What else did I see? Child's Play was pretty early. What was that, like 89? Child's Play was an early one. Return of the Living Dead and Return of the Living Dead Part 2 I rented a ton of from, the Blockbusters or the mom and pops during the dad sleepovers. I've told you that I watched Sleepaway Camp 2 at my dad's by myself and was blown away by the sexual nature, if you will, of that movie. And I remember renting it because the girl on the cover had Freddy's glove and Jason's mask in her bag. So I thought, oh, this is going to be great. So Sleepaway Camp was an early exposure. The Blob, like I mentioned before. Yeah, so that's the majority of what I can remember. Return of the Living Dead Part 2 quickly became a favorite. Return of the Living Dead Part 1 is legendary. Part 2 is so underrated. and I love it. I love part two. I love the comedy inclusions in Return of the Living Dead Part Two. I love the whole movie. I love the scenery. I love the neighborhood. I'm always a big neighborhood guy when it comes to movies. Oh, Poltergeist. Poltergeist I watched a ton of, and what sparked that memory was the neighborhood. The 80s track, right? The newly developed, not quite finished neighborhood track of houses that all look the same, and in the background there's nothing. It's just desert, it's just land. I love that. I love that neighborhood. E.T. has it. E.T. has that track neighborhood I love. Yeah, Poltergeist was a very early horror movie. So I think about this now because Liam and I are watching a lot of horror movies lately. I am censoring what he's watching. We've watched some PG-13 horror movies like Lights Out or Don't Say a Word. What else have we seen lately? We watched some. Oh, we watched some about imaginary friends on Shudder. Like there's one called Z Wants to Play, which is very good, and there's another one called Come Play, about imaginary friends. Those are cool. They're tame, but they're scary, jump scares, and he enjoys them. And I'm thinking, is this okay? Right? Is this too much for his little brain to handle? And I don't think so, in comparison to what we handled. Or are today's horror movies more intense? Obviously, there are some that are over the top intense, but I think we were equally scared of the silliness in the 80s, like the Jason Voorhees and the Freddy Kruegers, and I think we were equally scared of the monsters as we are of some of the reality horror stuff of today, the found footage stuff of today. Which has a little bit more of a real or a more real element to it, right? I don't want him to watch horror movies of stuff that can happen, right? We're not going to watch The Purge. He's not going to see any torture horror, like I don't know, The Hills Have Eyes or something like that. I still want to keep it a little bit more silly, I guess. But I have nothing but positive memories of being exposed to horror early on. Every kid had a Fangoria magazine, and for whatever reason, Fangoria would print like the most gruesome photos from the movies. And then I'm like trying to go into the movie and look for that scene, and a lot of times it wasn't even in the movie. It was just like a photo shoot or something. But Fangoria would have horribly gory photos that we all just loved. And I think that there's something very nostalgic and very 80s about horror. Now, 70s you had horror, but I think it was kid horror. You go back to like, I don't know, the Universal Monsters or that sort of thing. I don't know what horror movies kids were watching in the 70s, if they were watching anything. But the 80s, the pop culture of it just kind of exploded, and horror took over, and all of these characters were created. Michael Myers and Jason and Freddy and Leatherface and Chucky and Ghoulies and characters like that started to become their own entities, their own existences. Amityville, I loved as a kid. Saw Amityville pretty early on, the James Brolin one, Margot Kidder. I saw that movie pretty early. Still like that movie a lot. I think that's probably one of the best, or the best Amityville for sure. But what do you think it was back then that led us to be brave, and especially me, who was in a basement bedroom 2 floors away from anybody else at 9-10 years old in the dark, watching unedited television by myself? I don't know, but as I look back on it today, I look back on it with nothing but fond memories. I think it was great. I wasn't exposed to anything that confused me too much, or that I didn't understand. I didn't see. I don't remember seeing anything that was like over the top. as far as, and like The Entity or something like that. I mean, The Entity is awful to even watch today, but I didn't see any of that stuff. But nothing but love for horror, and it's stuck with me all these years. And I whether it's against popular opinion or not, I would like my kids to be horror fans and enjoy horror and just take it for what it's worth and what it is, and separate it from reality and just have a good time with it. So what are your early memories of horror movies? How young were you? And what'd you think? What'd you think? What were your early favorites? As we enter 30 days of October, I will try my best to watch as many movies as possible and report back to you the day after. So it's likely that I report back to you tomorrow about Aliens, Alien Part 2, and we'll see how that one goes. And then I'm going to watch one of your suggestions. A couple people have sent in some suggestions, and I'm going to watch some of those, and then I'm going to pick a random Shudder movie, go with that. We'll watch some that I should have watched all these years. I'm actually going to watch Killer Tomatoes from Outer Space. I don't know why, but I think I'm supposed to, just to cross it off the list. I'm definitely going to watch some that I should have watched all these years, and we'll report back on those as well. All right, that is all. Happy Halloween, happy October, happy horror movie watching. We'll see you tomorrow. Good night now.